This is the first Battle of Bull Run. And I first want to say thank you again to Styles by Nina. I know it's been a while, but this I feel is going to be connected to the book she read, the View of the Hebrews, which we know it was a extensive look at the Indians from the East Coast, from Upper Canada down to the West Indies, and their lifestyles, and comparing it to the Jews, or the Hebrews, I'm sorry, and how their customs were matching up side by side. It was the minister Ethan Smith, who mostly wanted to point out that this was going on, that it wasn't mirage. They thought they had found the lost tribes, right? Which goes back to the word Indian, right? Go to the Los Angeles Times. They have it printed. What does the word Indian mean? The small discussion is you have to break down what it means in Spanish, right? Los Indios, the second people. What was it? There was another term they had, the lost people, or the people in God, the lost nation. Because at the time, everyone was familiar with who the Jews were, but the 10 tribes were lost to the invading community that took over Europe. So here we go. I've been going over stuff about Abraham Lincoln because some of the stuff just doesn't seem right. I forget the name of the general. One of his generals was fighting in Missouri, and he wrote what's it called there? What's that thing called there? I forget what it's called. Wow. Emancipation. He wrote an emancipation proclamation to free the slaves in Missouri, and Lincoln chewed him out over it and told him, you're not doing that. That they were going to win the war and not emancipate or quote unquote free anyone, right? Which, right there goes against that whole idea. The whole war, the Civil War, was about freeing the slaves between the North and the South. No, it later on became a tactic. That's what it really became, right? Because they felt that the North had enough might that they could win it without doing that. That their military was going to be strong enough, and that the industrial complex of moving everything to mills and getting out of agricultural farming was the way to go for the future. But as I'm looking over stuff about Lincoln, I ran into that war, or that battle there in Kansas, right, with the Jayhawks and stuff like that, right? And you learn about how the Democrats won and they got to keep their slaves. But there's a part in this article I was reading, and then I heard it in a documentary, and I'm like, wait, that's the second time I ran across this, so what's up with that? But they said when the battle in Kansas was over, the Democrats went, meaning he sent a representative to Philadelphia, and they took down the flag there at the Capitol. And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? So now I've been on a mad hunt to try to find out what flag was flying during that year. So what flag would they have taken down? Because when you're learning about the EIN numbers, right, for the foreign EIN numbers and their tax exempt status and so on and so forth, Philadelphia is the only city inside the United States, that you can receive a 98 foreign EIN number. And I'm wondering why, out of all places, why would Philadelphia be that? And to me, it's just a question: is it because it was the last? But was it because it's the last remnant of what was here before this place was overthrown with the United States Corporation? Like, was it the last real place that you could say the Americans had their power? That's all I'm trying to figure out. That's what I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. But there's a part where they mention Lincoln's life in his bio, and he served in the Battle of Bull Run. And when I was looking up the Battle of Bull Run, it says the Battle of Manassas. Now I'm like, wait a minute. The Battle of Manassas, right? Now, isn't that one of the second sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manassas? Now we have Lex Blue told us all a long time ago, Mount Ephraim in Vermont, and then you have Manassas in Virginia. But they didn't want to give the name of why Virginia, or this place is named that. Um, see here, they want to tell you it used to be a junction, but when you try to figure out why is the junction named that, you're gonna find out that it's actually named after a gap in the Blue Ridge Mountains called the Manassas Gap. But like I said, as I spent some time trying to figure out where this was. I mean, not where it was, but who named this? Why was it called that? Here, let's go down to the history here. And like I said, they're not going to give you the name, who named it in this piece at all. They just want to tell you, hey, this is the name of it, and this is where you can find it.
In July 1861, the First Battle of Manassas, also known as the First Battle of Bull Run, was fought nearby, the first major land battle of the American Civil War. Manassas commemorated the 150th anniversary of the First Battle of Manassas on July 21–24, 2011. 11 Fencing at Manassas Battlefield. The Second Battle of Manassas, or the Second Battle of Bull Run, was fought near Manassas on August 28–30, 1862. At that time, Manassas Junction was little more than a railroad crossing, but a strategic one, with rails leading to Richmond, Virginia, Washington, D.C., and the Shenandoah Valley. Despite these two Confederate victories, Manassas Junction was in Union hands for most of the war. Following the war, the crossroads grew into the town of Manassas, which was incorporated in 1873. In 1894, Manassas was designated the county seat of Prince William County, replacing Brentsville. In 1975, Manassas was incorporated as an independent city, and as per Virginia law, was separated from Prince William County. The Manassas Historic District Cannon Branch Fort Liberia, a plantation house, and the Manassas Industrial School for Colored Youth are listed on the National Register of Historic Places 12.
That's another thing you gotta look into, Liberian plantation house. But pause right here for a moment.
One Mountain Gap, where Interstate 66 crosses the Blue Ridge, bears an Indian name, Manassas. A historical marker at the gap notes that it might have been named for a local Jewish innkeeper with the biblical name Manasseh. But there would have been no one to come to the inn when the name Manassas first appeared on Surveyor John Warner's 1737 area map. The area was not settled until a decade later. I tend to believe that the name Manassas relates to Massanutten Mountain, the prominent range of the Appalachians to the west, quite visible from Manassas Gap. Massanutten may, in an Indian language, mean peaked mountain, locally pronounced in two syllables peaked.
I'm sorry, it means peaked mountain, locally pronounced in two syllables, peak D. And like I said, this is from the history of London County, Virginia. I'll leave this in the description box. So they're saying that it had to have come from an Indian name. So why would they shorten it though? Why would they shorten it to, and guess what Indian it was? So again, it gives me someone else to look into, because one of the things I think is interesting about the Blue Ridge Mountains is when my sister and I were going over this, that the Indians who had blue eyes and green eyes, that were often accused of their parents mixing, or what they call the Melungeons, right? The Melungeons, who were quote-unquote mulattoes. This is the bloodline that they say Abraham Lincoln is descendant of Tom Hanks, Elvis Presley, when they did their DNA gathering to prove, because the Portuguese were claiming that they were descendants of them, it showed that the Y chromosome of nearly all the males, they said, 11 out of the 10 males tested, the Y chromosome were supposed to be of quote-unquote sub-Saharan African. And the mothers were all turning up to be of German, British, and Irish descent. But as you read about the history of the Melungeons, the rest of the tribes told them that this portion of land in the Blue Ridge Mountains would be where they would have to live. That they could still live, but they couldn't be amongst the other tribes with them being mixed like they were. So, yeah.